It's time for the show about the people and the places of the Carolinas with the occasional visitors. In addition to hosting the award-winning syndicated TV show Life in the Carolinas, Carl White writes a weekly syndicated column and now hosts this weekly show, the Life in the Carolinas podcast. Now you can hear the story about the stories. And now, here's your host, Carl White.
Hey, Larry, how are you?
I'm phenomenal. How are you, Carl? Great to see you.
It's great to see you. Awfully glad you're in the studio. Tell folks who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm Larry Biddle, born in Denver, Colorado, grew up in Sacramento, met a blonde Southern belle in New York Harbor on my way to Spain. I ended up in Conway, South Carolina, and I've been there since '63. Came there as an educator. We went back to Spain, and then we been involved with Coastal Carolina University, all the Burroughs family companies, founder of something I started at Conway High School called, started out as a #1 initiative, then became Renaissance, and now it's in the world's greatest. So I'm an educator and a businessman, and working on helping educators apply business principles in schools rather than programs from the government.
Right.
It's the biggest business in the world, so why don't we have business principles? It's pretty simple, really.
So it's an interesting concept, and it's certainly something that you would have your hands full, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Right.
No dull moments in what all my friends call Biddle mania.
I've witnessed that. I shared your story with someone not long ago when we were talking about Myrtle Beach and Conway, and I said, hey, have you folks been to historic downtown Conway? And they said, well, where's that at? And I said, you know what? 11 years ago, I felt the same way. I didn't know either, and I found it by mistake. And that's when you and I met as well.
That's
because
correct.
we were doing a promotional tour with radio stations. I was in Sherrill, South Carolina, at Jane Pigg's radio station there. And she has a newspaper as well. We'd finished that morning session. Then I got on the road and I set my GPS for Myrtle Beach. And it brought me right through historic downtown Conway. I didn't know it till I was in the middle of it.
Right.
And the reason I was traveling to Myrtle Beach is we were working on our first Christmas special, and with which we filmed in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And it was such an experience for me coming through Conway, because it was really picturesque. And I've shared this story, I shared it with you. Literally, I drove through town and I'm like, wow. And I crossed the bridge, which went over the Waccamaw River.
Right.
I found a turnaround, and I came back because I wanted to get another look at this charming little town. And long story short, I stopped at the chamber and asked them, I said, who's your biggest champion? Who should I talk to about learning more? Can't do it right this minute, but I want to reach out to them. And they said, Larry Biddle. And I wrote your name and number down. And we called, and I asked you for 30 minutes, and you said, sure. And 3 hours later,
we had the full tour.
We had
it was
the
a
full
good
tour.
thing. Yeah. It's a great thing.
Yeah, that began our relationship. That's how it all happened.
Hey, it was meant to be, Carl.
Yeah, I think so. So, Larry, let's talk about what's going on in the world now, what's going on in South Carolina, down in Horry County. I particularly wanted you to be with us in this series of programming that we're doing now, because a lot of people are concerned. We have the coronavirus, or, we have school closures, we have businesses temporarily shut down, restaurants you can't go into, you just get pick up, all sorts of things that have people frightened. And there's one thing that I've learned from my conversations with you and observations of how you're approaching life, even with your Instagram posts of just the waterway there where you have your place in Horry County. It's always uplifting. So I wanted us to talk about, how do we get through this? I mean, you've been through a lot of things down at the coast, but this is a global thing. What do you think?
Well, I kind of cage a lot of things without a cage. Mm-hmm. I was an Eagle Scout at age 12 in California, so I've been studying the power of the eagle, and obviously the American eagle, for a long time, over 50 years, I guess. And, I realized that eagleship is soaring. Eagles soar above whatever's down there. They really don't it's down there, they can go to it, but the soaring part and what uplifts the eagle is the updrafts. And if they just hung around on the ground, they would probably be shot or something.
Right.
Coming down here to the studio from Beach Mountain this morning, I saw an American eagle. I said, Jenny, there's an eagle. Look at that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that you would.
Yeah, and here's what I explained just the other day. Eagles, they're black. If you think of their colors, it represents the country. They're black, brown, red, white, and yellow. And that's the fabric of America. That's all the races and all the creeds. And, they have two wings, a right wing and a left wing. And if only the right wing is working, they can't fly. And if only the left wing is working, they can't fly. And it's till those wings work together, which I think we're seeing as we look at business and government. I think the power of the eagle becomes the vision. They have two sets of eyelids. When they're high, and they start into a dive and they see prey, and their talons are getting ready. They have two sets of eyelids, and in the dive, the first eyelid protects them from that dropping because they're dropping from a high altitude. Pilots have seen them at 25,000 feet where their wings ice up. That's pretty high.
That's intense.
Yeah, but when they get closer to the prey, those eyelids slide back, and the eyelids that come into focus, almost like a telescope, is what allows them to hunt and fish. And so you begin to realize that when the right wing and the left wing work together and the vision is proper, no matter what's there, they succeed and we will succeed. In Alaska in the Chilcot Valley, there's the spawning of salmon, and about 3,000 to 5,000 eagles a year go out there and hunt and fish and learn together. And I think what I'm seeing as I look at all the things that are going on, I see business and government and education and all of these entities that are affected by this global pandemic coming together. We've got to come together, work together, stay together to get it done. And I think, that's why the power of the eagle is such an appropriate symbol. Benjamin Franklin, Carl, wanted us to be the turkeys.
That's right, I remember.
And they outvoted him, and they said, no, we're not going to be the turkeys. And thank the Lord.
Yeah.
So
it's this thing of symbolism that you're talking about, right? I mean, when I listen to you talk, and over the years as we've gotten to know each other, I mean, you're saying the same thing now you were, 11 years ago. So I'm hearing this. I've met so many people that have had relationships with you, and they all have nothing but positive things to say because of this influence. So let me ask you, let's talk about, as we go through dealing and there is an end. We absolutely will go to the end of this problem.
Absolutely.
So we're absolutely going there. But by us coming together, what do you imagine how can we grow from this experience in a good way? Is it possible that we can do more than just survive this pandemic and just get through it? Can we actually come out on the other end stronger?
Absolutely. I think there's no question that there's strength in whatever challenges you have. The eagle's wings get stronger by rising. And so if they just sat in the nest all day, they wouldn't be very powerful. And I think, our politicians and others, they can kind of get stuck in, I guess I would call discussions and dialogues and so forth, but they're not very good with logistics. And what's going to get us through all this are the logistics that we all need and that we have by the synergism from all these entities coming together. Because not one entity, not the government, not business only, not the armed forces. It's all of the things that America does well. And we've responded to challenges for My dad was in World War II and fed the Flying Tigers,
Wow.
China, Burma, and India. So, I learned that kind of stuff early. And so it's the challenges that make us stronger. We can either care for each other, which builds to strength, or just take care of others that caters to weakness. And we don't need to be catering to weakness. I mean, we're all learning all the things you got to do. Be sensitive, the spacing, the hand washing, the paying attention. We couldn't shake hands much here today when I came, and
Right.
We all did the elbow shake,
Right.
and a couple of us did a foot. So
Right.
it's okay. We can do all that,
But at least we're together, though.
we are together.
And we're safe. We're acknowledging the space, and we're being mindful. We're washing our hands. We're doing all those things. And I think it's reasonably safe for us to be together. But if one of us had been, in that we should be quarantined, then we would have done that as well.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't be here. I guess what I'm hoping for as we go through this, and as you can look back over not just a few years, but many years, and what you've seen in the education world, and what you've seen in the business world, and as you've traveled around the country and speak at conferences, what are those messages that that the audience is not only, really into what you're saying, but later you've gotten feedback that it's maybe changed a few lives? What are the words that we need to hear, the thoughts we need to be thinking right now, Larry?
Well, my work with schools, when you work with a school, you're working with the whole community, really. You got parents involved and kids involved,
Right.
and teachers and students and staff, board members, businesses, offices. We don't even have a district office in Horry County today. We took that word and cashed it off, and it's just called Horry County Schools.
Right.
Which allowed us to focus really on teaching for learning for life forever, which I think is critical. But I really feel that where we are is moving together. I've used this a lot: onward, upward, forward, together.
Right.
And we don't have time to be critics of everything. I've been teaching lately for a while. The word dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction drives excellence, and it always has.
Explain that.
But we don't read it that way. Some people think dissatisfaction is critical and demeaning. No, it's not. If I wasn't content with what I was seeing in schools, I was watching schools basically build to the top kids, honor rolls. Not against honor rolls, but we got more kids. We got 80% of the kids not on the honor roll. What are we going to do with them?
Right.
And that's where we came up with a lot of things.
So the idea to lift them to where they can do better. They may not be on honor roll, but they can certainly go from an F or a D to a B.
Absolutely. And that's where we created, at Conway High School, when we started all this, which is now in 25,000 schools worldwide, maybe more.
And that program is called what?
Worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Worldwide. Yeah. We're building the world's greatest schools on purpose, using principles, business principles. I think we have so many programs in America that no one can keep them straight, and they're changing by the nanosecond.
Right.
And so, we said, wait a minute, principles are what's critical. And if you're not focused on the principles, then we got a real problem, because principles always drive the next levels. And so this dissatisfaction thing is, realize that if you're at this level and if you're satisfied with that, it's kind of like getting by and improving a little bit, and then excellent, and then wow factors. So I always ask, where are the wow factors in our communities? And how do you get there? If you're satisfied, Chick-fil-A is not satisfied with where they are. They get better all the time.
It's their driving
Yeah,
mission.
and that's their philosophy. We're going to get better. We're going to do whatever it takes. You see all these restaurants, for instance, doing the takeouts. You're not taking it out; they're taking it to your car.
Right.
So we do what we have to do, and that's what wow factors become. And I think unless we understand that dissatisfaction drives wow factors and excellence, then you never leave being status quo. And we don't need status quo to handle this, I don't think.
Right.
Well,
let me ask you that. So let me break this down for a moment. Pull the skin back, if you will. So when you're saying dissatisfaction, so here's a situation. I'm not satisfied with it.
Right.
I'm dissatisfied with it. It means I don't like it. So we have to apply some critical thinking.
That's exactly right.
In order to change the situation, right?
Yes.
Which could include our own response to the situation.
Right.
Okay, we got to think about this critically. We got to figure out how to deal with this problem.
Right.
And that's the only option, right? So dissatisfaction is pushing us to that level of performance of we've got to make a change, and that's the only option. We got to fix this.
That's right.
Is that what you're saying?
I am. It's again, dissatisfaction allows you to assess where you are and see how we get better. Very important.
Right.
No matter what it's in, I don't care. Churches. I mean, it fits families. It fits everybody.
Right.
And a lot of people, when I've just taught that around the country and the world today.
How do people respond? So you're up there, you're talking about this. What's the look on their face? What are they saying after the conference?
Yeah, I put up a word. I said, what is the most misunderstood word in our language? And I've done this in Spanish because I'm bilingual, and just got back from Santiago, Chile, and they all look at it and they don't know. Right. And then I put up the word dissatisfaction. And they look at that, and I said, not negative, it's positive. But it's not critical from the standpoint that I'm going to beat up on somebody who thought they had a good idea.
Right.
I'm just saying, hey, that's a great idea. How about this? How about this? What do you think, Mary Jane? What do you think, Bill? Let's take the power of the mastermind, is what I've called it over the years.
Right.
And come together on what we've got to do. And I see that happening in the country. In the beginning, it was far too political, in my opinion. Now we're coming out of that, which is good, and moving toward, working together to get it done, to take care of whatever we got to do.
Right.
America's good at that. We've been doing it from the beginning.
That's right.
I mean, if you think about how this country began.
It was on dissatisfaction.
Exactly. Yeah. We were dissatisfied with the British.
That's right.
And so we threw some tea in the Boston Harbor, and here we are.
That's the way it happened. And it took a lot of people coming together to figure it out. So it was hard work.
Yeah.
There were founding fathers they absolutely were not bosom buddies.
No.
They came from different backgrounds, but the one thing they had in common is they wanted it to be better.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, how do we get to the excellence and wow factors? I call them excellence and wow factors.
Right.
Getting by is not very successful in anything. If you ran Life in the Carolinas by just getting by, you and I wouldn't be in your studio.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true.
Right.
We've known each other for 11 years, and then thank you for linking me up with Charles Sosnick after I had a meeting at the university as a trustee and came by there and met him, and I've known him at Scene Magazine, and now he's doing some great things, and I think we're going to collaborate on the book that I've got. I've got a book written. Carl got to help me sew it together. I mean, it's it's powerful. I've had 20 articles in Scene.
Right.
You got to teach kids. Kids got to work hard.
Right.
Hard work trumps fun. I'm not against fun, but they're going to find out smart work is more fun than fun, in my opinion.
Right. And you can have fun doing that as well.
Of course you can.
I mean, that becomes...
Because it's the achievement side of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And you find your passion. I would not say that what I do is not work. Some people say, well, I do what I do if I didn't get paid, or it doesn't even feel like work. Well, if you get up and you put in, 8, 10, 12 hours, days, it's work, or maybe it's the years passing and my body is assimilating that as work now. So,
well, when you and I first met, I never saw anything as work, and I didn't see you in it either. It was passion.
Oh, sure. And it still is.
If what you do is passion, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And that will never change. So how does America come together on our passion to take charge? I don't really say take care, because take care is not very powerful. You gotta take charge. When we're taking charge, maybe it's not as quick as we'd like, and there's a lot of moving parts in all this stuff, you know.
Oh, sure.
As someone who's spent a lot of time in Italy over the years, and boy, they've just gotten whacked, amazing, you know, on this whole thing, and so.
Well, you've seen a lot of things come and go in Myrtle Beach. I mean, that's just part of that, of the culture, the, you know, tourism culture, things. It's ebb and flow at all times. What do we say, Larry? How can we draw from your wisdom, your experience, to where, you know, what do we say to restaurateurs that are, you know, they're not big chains, they're mom and pops that have worked for years? And I was talking to a business person a couple of days ago in a town not far from here, and they were concerned. They said, this might put some of our folks out of business. I said, surely not. And he said, well, you know, some of these folk it's really important that they sell food every single day that they're open.
Sure.
And now we're talking, and the idea of takeout, that's great, but, you know, restaurants have been around for years, so they may not have even had a chance to establish, that may not even be part of their model.
Right.
You know, they may not even be set up. Nobody, people may not even know that that's an option. They may not even know how to do it, you know. And so there's that concern. I believe here's my question. So what happens when dissatisfaction is hit face on? And I'm not talking about I'm talking about two trains on the same track going head to head. Here's your dissatisfaction, and then here's fear. So fear comes on, and it's getting closer and closer, and dissatisfaction, you know, they're putting on the brakes, you know, instead of going full forward. This goes, people don't know what to do. It's frightening, it's scary. So fear is something that we're seeing now as well. So how do we process, how do we get from where we are to where obviously people are dissatisfied with being completely broke. That's not, that fear is there.
Yeah.
So what do we do? How do we apply the eagle thought process to get through this?
Well, you know, I think fear, I've always taught, is false evidence assumed real, FEAR. And I think
false evidence
assumed real. Yeah. And, you know, assumptions are dangerous no matter what. I like to use the word authenticity, much more effective word. And, you know, no matter what, the entrepreneur is really geared to be flexible more than someone that just is not an entrepreneur. I'm not against employees, you know, what I've been one. Well, many of us have. Some of us still are. But I think the entrepreneur is much more resilient. Resilience is powerful. You can't go back and make a new start, but you can start now to make a new ending.
Right.
Which is so powerful. And you know, we own a fuel company in Conway. Jerry Cox Company's been there 100 years, and we bought it 5 or 6 years ago, I guess. And I've been president of it and on the board for many years, and we just bought it from the family. And we're really talking about one of my sons this morning on early, and everything was rocking along pretty good. All of our techs are understanding what you got to do and service customers and get out there, and you know you got to meet them where they are, go in their house if you need to, check their logs, but it's not a time to glad hand and hang out and whatever.
Right.
And we've got them wearing masks, which is good. You know, I mean it's you just have to take precautions.
Right.
We wouldn't have football players with no equipment running around the field.
Sure.
So in this pandemic, you got to gear up. You know, I think that's vital to where we go.
Is it fair to acknowledge fear, no matter what it's? I mean, it's a very real thing, and where I agree with the notion that it's we are buying into a bit of things that it's not as bad.
Right.
Losing the pay for a week, 2 weeks, and then getting control. Well, how do I pay that bill? I think there is a reality of our society in general during this process that it is assumed that these things are going to happen.
Right.
Because, restaurateurs and their employees, and if you're not making tips, because, the wage is very small, then you make your money on your tips.
Right.
So when you have basically, not 100%, but a huge percentage of those people, there's no table for them to wait on because it's got to be taken in a bag to the car.
Yeah.
So these folks aren't going to make money, and I'm sure that those that owe bills, I would imagine that the banks and everybody's going to take in consideration who they are. But still yet, it's that complicated thing to work through that all and not sit there and make yourself emotionally sick.
Right, exactly.
And you've tested negative, you're not going to get it, you never will get it, but yet you come out sick emotionally.
Right, yeah.
That's a rough thing.
Yes, it is. No question. Murrells Inlet is the seafood capital of South Carolina. I don't know how many restaurants are there, but probably 30 plus.
Right.
And it says it on the sign, so we all believe it.
Yeah.
And it's been that way a long time.
Right.
But they're moving to this, take it to the car thing.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, instead of leaving a tip for 2 or 3, you're giving them 5, maybe 10.
Right.
It's the goodness of the American people. And, that's in us all. I hate that not everybody has it, but I think we're going to get it. These kind of things make you better and stronger, I think, especially coming through. And we will get there. We'll get there together, in my opinion. And I think we'll find some of these folks that are in the service industry are probably going to figure out some things that they could be more entrepreneurial, frankly. That's not all bad.
Right.
There's 4 niches in life: employees, self-employed, business owners, and investors.
Right.
So just hold your horses on the stock market. It'll come back. It'll be okay.
Right.
Don't be selling everything.
Right.
That's a good thing. And, I think we'll see along as it goes how many of us will come out of this with some new vision, because you're almost forced, whether you like it or not, to see things in a different way.
Right.
Seeing things in new ways is what creates invention and creativity. And
so, are you suggesting, Larry, that let's say you're going to have to work remotely from home? So,
right, yep.
So you've got we moved on from the fast food business, fast food and the hospitality business in general. So, which would include restaurants, hotels, and so let's say that you're in that group that you just have to go home. So in that time of being quarantined or just being not in your normal working groove.
Yeah, isolated somewhat, yeah.
Are you suggesting that might be an opportunity to allow some creative thought to come about?
Yes.
And
it's a great creative time if you do it, if you look at it that way.
Right.
Like, who am I?
Right.
And what do I want to do? I was told by my 5th grade teacher when my parents in the Catholic school in Sacramento that I was going to become a teacher. And I had drawn this baseball player, a pitcher, and it was up on the bulletin board, and asked my parents if they'd seen it. They said, yeah, we saw that like that. I said, what did Sister Jacinta say? They said, you're going to be a teacher. And I said, I'm going to be a baseball player. Well, she was right.
Right.
But I didn't realize it at the time. And, no one gets anywhere without a teacher. So those of us who teach and learn every day, we ought to stay in that world, because we ought to be, leaders lead, and we know how to respond to challenges. And it doesn't need to be another meeting. It needs to be actions. Actions matter. I began to put actions with an X, because it's where opportunities and preparedness meet. And in this scenario, no one was prepared for any of this for sure.
Sure.
So what kind of actions are we going to take to move forward? And that's my word principles. I put an X in there too. That's my new spelling for the word principles, because I teach 10 of them, and they're all business principles. And they're not based on bureaucracy or anything else. Gravity is gravity, and that's a principle.
Right.
So you can explain to I can take a ball in a kindergarten classroom and drop it, and they know it's not going to stay in the air.
Right.
And we can go to NASA and look at their gravity, which is looking at the Mars. It's both gravity.
Right.
But see, I think we've gotten far too far away from principles. We get stuck in programs which are kind of inflexible.
So when we get to a place of where we forget the fundamental principles, it's kind of like cause and effect.
That's right.
We met 11 years ago. We began, I would consider to be a friendship.
Yep.
And I've called you many times to say, Larry, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Knowing that you have answers, or you would have thoughts based upon years of experience. So I would place value in that. Never did you not take my call or return my call. And it was always, a thoughtful comment that you would make. And when I began to work on the idea for this series, and taking our podcast to a video product, which would hopefully during the next few months bring some hope and inspiration.
Right.
Not empty hope.
Right.
But truly some fundamentals. We had an entertainer on with us earlier and recorded a podcast. He had written a song about the virus. It's a fun piece, but this guy, he spends his life traveling around the world, doing things with music to help bring cultures together. And we talked about how that had affected his life.
Right.
And changed the way he thinks about things. Not that the way he thought before was bad, because obviously he was thinking about doing this thing. But it was in that journey that he changed and evolved in ways he hadn't even thought about.
That's right.
So it sounds like you're saying that the embolism of the ego, the idea of applying solid principles in our lives, that's a foundation that we can always fall back on, that will be there for us no matter what.
That's right. Yeah, principles are, first of all, no respecters of persons. They're not.
So you have 10.
We have 10.
So could we quickly go down that list?
Well, we can.
Or a few of them, just a few. Give us, if you will, before we depart, share a few of those principles that you reckon to be maybe the most powerful that can help us in the situation we're in now as a nation and as the world.
Right. A couple things that I've taught and shared, and people look at me like, uh-oh, you're right. Hollow heroes. This is my first original thought, which I guess you don't get many. I got it maybe, 10, 15 years ago. Hollow heroes have empty messages. And I think far too often we listen to far too many hollow heroes with empty messages.
What's a hollow hero?
Rock stars, movie stars, and sports stars. I don't use those terms, and I never have.
Right.
I use all-stars.
Right.
So, as we look at things, there's essential things in education and churches and business that you better pay attention to. And one of those very important ones is what the term I've coined is called Staffel Tea. And Staffel Tea is everyone. I've said for years, no one gets anywhere without teachers. And there's teachers in this industry. Tim is one sitting right here with us.
Right.
There's teachers like anybody we know, your minister. They're teaching because they're sharing their knowledge and wisdom with others. That's teaching.
Right.
So, when I was on the university level, they couldn't handle the word Staffel Tea because faculty kind of has this, I guess I'd call it elitist, like we have our doctorate and we did this and we, and, you know, and I looked around. I was at Coastal Carolina University for, well, connected to it for 50 years.
Right.
I was in the second building, so I know about that world.
Right.
And but you know,
in the beginning.
yeah, in the beginning, second building, that's where I was. But you know, and I've said to them, you know, Staffel Tea is everybody. Don't think that custodians are not counseling kids, that they're saying, get out of the restroom, John.
Right.
And John's saying, I lost my puppy dog this morning. What do you think he's going to do? Write them up? No.
Yeah.
He's going to say, oh my gosh, what kind of dog was it? How long have you had him?
Right.
You know, so it's the connection that the human element gets. And that's who teachers are. You know, show me your relationships and I'll show you success in the classroom. Because we better be training a lot of great teachers who understand the power of doing it. Not just talking about it, not just filling in blanks, not just that stuff. So vital to the future. So here's an opportunity. Who are going to be the examples of what you do when this crisis, we're in it? You don't give up. You don't throw in the towel. You rise above, and more importantly, you help others rise above, because parents will ask you questions about kids. I said, hey, you know, I remember one of my students, I got a call from the mother. She said, I understood you expelled my daughter, or not expelled, suspended her for 3 days for listening. And I said, well, yeah, that's true. But she didn't tell you the rest of the story. I said, ma'am, I've found out that kids don't bring the whole story home. She said, what do you mean? I said, she was listening to answers on a test. I said, that's basically cheating. Oh, she didn't tell me that. I said, I know. It's okay. I got it.
Yeah.
You know, we'll figure it out. She'll be all right. It won't be the end of the world. And so it's a philosophy, I guess, followed by action that allows us to adapt, and we must. We've got to adapt. We're adapting.
Right.
You know, we all would rather adapt sooner than later, but you know, sometimes it takes a little while.
Sure.
And you know, I feel like one of the things that you know, as we talked earlier about foundations, see, I've recommended that schools start foundations on purpose, because you know, I've found that fundraising, which is cookie dough and wrapping paper and candles and all that stuff, is kind of a waste of time, really. So we need to be looking at a foundation, 501c3 tax exempts. You get an accountant, you get an attorney, and the next thing you know, they're up and running. I've started, I don't know how many in the country, 1,000 plus. I've been talking about it forever on purpose. Conway High School's foundation will have, we've recognized members of the community and teachers for 20 years. It's amazing, the list of people. So when you focus on the leaders and you appreciate what they do and the sacrifices they've made to get where they are, you know, no one kind of lucks their way to the top, I don't think. And this is what I see. You know, you got to surround yourself with a lot of great people and work smart together and realize disagreements are just dissatisfaction, and you can rise above it.
Right.
You have to.
And I think that dissatisfaction between people when you're dealing with problems or just dealing with your process of doing whatever you're doing is a normal part of what we have to experience. We have to do that.
It's called the human element.
Right. And if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't, you know, if you want to be a hermit, I guess you can be.
Right.
But that doesn't work too well. We're having trouble getting people to stay, you know, 6 feet away.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's just the human element, the way it works. We're tweaking it some. You know, we don't mind tweaking other stuff. Well, let's tweak this stuff. You know, you can learn it. It's new. Anything worth learning, is worth doing poorly in the beginning. You
So
kind
you
of
can-
fail your way to success.
So you
Carl.
can get to where you want to be.
Right.
Maybe sometime you don't even know exactly where it is, but you know it's over there, not where you are,
That's right.
and it's okay. It's okay to have a
It
few
is.
stumbles.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's okay to, it's okay to get a bad grade on one test. You just don't need to do it on all of them.
No.
And that dissatisfaction with that losing will drive you to the victory.
Well, I always ask in audiences that I speak to, if you're perfect, please stand. And I've had no one stand
Right.
in 50 years. And I'm 77, so last year I was 76 trombones. This year I'm the Interstate 77.
Right.
It's named after 77. So I'm getting my picture made next to the sign that
77.
flows through our two states.
Right. I love that.
And
I love that.
But wisdom doesn't come easy. It's living and learning and
you got to do it.
thinking what you got to do.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's we can do it. We will do it. There's no question in my mind. We sucked into the instant gratification and the instant everything in America. You flip a light switch and the light comes on. Da 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 da. Well, this is not that.
Right.
So maybe that causes some of the fear. We're used to getting things
quick.
happen quickly.
Right.
And this is going to really create our power of stamina, which is a good word.
Right. Larry, Biddle, it is always great having a conversation with you. I really appreciate you coming into the studio and just sharing your thoughts and the years of experience. So I know when you and I talk, we're not just talking about, let's try this, but you're sharing some ideas that have been tried and they've been around for a long time now. And you're celebrating our teachers. But more than that, I think if I'm hearing you right, we have our academic teachers, we have teachers within our system, but we have teachers all around us who may be, as you say, our ministers, our police officers, our firefighters,
military,
our military, our sanitation engineers. Just about everyone in any occupation has that capacity to be one of our valuable teachers.
Yeah, and it comes down to what I call my 3 levels of commitment. You can try,
right,
which is not much commitment. If I had to try to come to the studio, I probably wouldn't be here because I walk out and say, "Oh, it's cloudy." Well, I tried,
right,
but I didn't get there. Or you can do your best, and I'm not against do your best, but I don't want the surgeon to open me up and say, I'm going to do my best to find your ruptured appendix.
right,
I'm out of that place.
right.
So what we're doing and how we'll get through this is whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. And that's what we've all got to do. We got to work toward that. And we will get there.
To the other side.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome. My honor.
Thanks for listening to the Life in the Carolinas podcast. If you enjoyed your time with us, please visit the show's website at lifeinthecarolinas.com. Join our mailing list, and we'll keep you updated every week on what we have coming up and other interesting things around the Carolinas. We value you as a podcast subscriber. We'll see you next week. And remember what Carl says, it's never a bad time for a good story.